Chapter 1. The Galactic Stagehand. The ISS Galileo sliced through the void of space, its sleek, matte black hull blending seamlessly with the endless expanse of stars. Inside the vessel's command center, Captain Lara Nova stood with her arms crossed, her piercing green eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The screen showed a chaotic battle unfolding in real time, with ships of various sizes and configurations exchanging volleys of energy weapons and missiles. "Status report," Lara barked, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "We're at the edge of the Zeta Centauri system," replied Lieutenant Commander Mikhail Sorkin, the Galileo's tactical officer. "Sensors indicate a large-scale engagement between two alien fleets. The larger fleet appears to be gaining the upper hand." Lara studied the display, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had seen her fair share of interstellar conflicts during her years in the United Nations Space Command, but something about this battle felt different. The larger fleet's ships were massive, angular constructs that dwarfed their opponents, and their weapons seemed to possess a level of sophistication that she had never encountered before. "Can we identify the combatants?" she asked. Sorkin shook his head. "Negative, Captain. Neither fleet matches any known profiles in our database." Lara's mind raced as she considered the implications. The Galileo was on a deep space exploration mission, tasked with charting new star systems and establishing contact with alien civilizations. Stumbling upon an unknown conflict was not part of the plan, but she knew that ignoring it was not an option. "Ensign Takahashi, bring us in closer," she ordered. "Lieutenant Commander Sorkin, prepare to engage our stealth systems. I want a closer look at those ships." The Galileo glided silently towards the battle, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to all but the most sophisticated sensors. As they approached, the scale of the conflict became clearer. The larger fleet belonged to a species that Lara had never seen before, with hulking, insectoid ships that bristled with weaponry. Their opponents, while smaller in number, fought with a fierce determination that belied their size. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield, and one of the smaller ships disintegrated under a barrage of energy beams. Lara watched in horror as the larger fleet pressed its advantage, swarming the remaining defenders with ruthless efficiency. "My God," whispered Ensign Takahashi, her face pale. "They're slaughtering them." Lara's jaw clenched as she made a split-second decision. "Sorkin, prepare to deploy our sensor drones. We need to gather as much intelligence as we can about these aliens and their technology." "Captain, are you sure that's wise?" asked Sorkin, his tone cautious. "We're not equipped for a confrontation, and our orders are to observe and report, not engage." Lara met his gaze, her eyes flashing with determination. "I'm aware of our orders, Lieutenant Commander, but I will not sit idly by while innocent lives are lost. If these aliens pose a threat to Earth, we need to know about it." She turned back to the display, her mind already racing with possibilities. The Galileo might be small, but it was packed with cutting-edge technology and crewed by some of the best minds in the UNSC. If anyone could unravel the mysteries of this conflict and find a way to protect humanity, it was them. "Deploy the drones," she ordered, her voice steady, "and prepare to transmit our findings back to Earth. Something tells me that this is just the beginning of a much larger struggle." As the Galileo's sensor drones streaked towards the battlefield, Lara felt a sense of purpose settle over her. She had sworn an oath to defend humanity against any and all threats, and she would not rest until that promise was fulfilled. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that the unconquerable spirit of her species would never be broken. Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. The holographic display in the Galileo's command center flickered as streams of data poured in from the sensor drones. Lara and her crew watched in rapt attention as the drones darted through the battlefield, their advanced sensors probing the alien ships for any scrap of useful information. "What have we got?" Lara asked, her eyes never leaving the screen. Lieutenant Kenji Sato, the Galileo's science officer, studied the readouts with a furrowed brow. "The larger fleet appears to belong to a species known as the Zorgax," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "Their technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. Their ships are powered by some kind of advanced fusion reactors, and their weapons seem to be based on exotic matter manipulation." Lara nodded, her mind racing with the implications. The UNSC had encountered advanced alien civilizations before, but nothing on this scale. If the Zorgax were hostile, they could pose an existential threat to humanity. "And their opponents?" she asked. "The smaller fleet belongs to a species called the Thellaxians," replied Sato. "They seem to be technologically inferior to the Zorgax, but they're putting up a hell of a fight. Their ships are more maneuverable, and they seem to be using some kind of guerrilla tactics to even the odds." Lara watched as a group of Thellaxian fighters swarmed a Zorgax cruiser, peppering its hull with energy weapons. The cruiser's shields flared, but held firm, and it responded with a barrage of its own that tore the fighters to shreds. "They can't win," she said softly, her heart aching for the brave Thellaxians. "They're outmatched in every way." Sorkin cleared his throat. "Captain, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we have a problem. Our drones are detecting a Zorgax sensor sweep heading our way. If they spot us—" Lara's eyes widened in alarm. The Galileo's stealth systems were advanced, but they weren't foolproof. If the Zorgax detected them, they would be in serious trouble. "Recall the drones," she ordered, her voice tense, "and prepare to jump to hyperspace. We need to get this information back to Earth as soon as possible." The crew sprang into action, their hands flying over their consoles as they prepared the ship for a hasty retreat. Lara watched the battle raging on the screen, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she was leaving the Thellaxians to their fate. Just as the Galileo's hyperdrive began to spin up, a massive Zorgax dreadnought broke away from the main battle and headed straight for them. Lara's blood ran cold as she realized that they had been detected. "They've seen us!" shouted Sorkin, his face pale. "They're charging weapons!" Lara gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white. "Emergency jump, now!" The Galileo shuddered as its hyperdrive engaged, the stars outside the viewport stretching into long, glowing streaks. For a moment, Lara thought they had made it, but then the ship lurched violently, throwing the crew from their seats. "We've been hit!" cried Ensign Takahashi, her voice laced with panic. "Hyperdrive is offline. Shields are down to 20%. Lara struggled to her feet, her mind racing. They were alone, defenseless, and facing an enemy that outgunned them in every way. But she was not about to give up without a fight. "Divert all power to the engines," she ordered, her voice steady. "We'll make a run for the nearest star system and try to lose them in the asteroid belt." As the Galileo's engines roared to life, Lara knew that they were in for the fight of their lives. But she also knew that they had no choice. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and they would not fail, no matter what the cost. Chapter 3. Desperate Measures. The Galileo shuddered as another volley of Zorgax weapons slammed into its weakening shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the command center. Lara gripped the arms of her chair, her jaw clenched as she watched the Zorgax dreadnought loom ever closer on the view screen. "Shields down to 10%!" shouted Sorkin, his hands flying over the controls. "We can't take much more of this!" Lara's mind raced as she considered their options. The Galileo was fast, but it was no match for the Zorgax ship in a straight-up fight. They needed to find a way to level the playing field, and fast. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. It was risky, perhaps even suicidal, but it was their only chance. "Sato, Do we still have those experimental EMP warheads in the armory? She asked, her voice tense. The science officer nodded, his eyes widening in realization. Yes, Captain, but they've never been tested in combat before. We don't know if they'll work. Lara's lips tightened into a grim smile. Well, there's no time like the present. Sorkin, prepare to launch a spread of the warheads on my mark. Takahashi, as soon as they detonate, I want you to divert all power to the engines and make a break for that asteroid field. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but they knew better than to question their captain's orders. They had been through too much together, faced too many impossible odds, to doubt her now. Lara watched the Zorgax ship grow larger on the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that their chances of survival were slim, but she refused to give up hope. As long as there was still a chance, no matter how small, she would keep fighting. "Launch warheads now!" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. A series of dull thumps echoed through the Galileo's hull as the EMP warheads streaked towards the Zorgax ship. For a moment, nothing happened, and Lara feared that the weapons had failed, but then a blinding flash of light erupted from the dreadnought's hull, and the massive ship shuddered and went dark. "Their shields are down!" cried Sorkin, his voice filled with triumph. The EMP worked. Lara allowed herself a small sigh of relief, but she knew that their reprieve would be short-lived. The Zorgax were nothing if not adaptable, and they would soon find a way to compensate for the EMP's effects. "Takahashi, get us into that asteroid field now," she ordered, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The Galileo's engines roared to life, propelling the ship towards the dense field of rocks and debris. Lara knew that navigating the asteroid field would be treacherous, but it was their only chance to evade the Zorgax and make repairs. As the ship wove through the tumbling asteroids, Lara's thoughts turned to the information they had gathered during the battle. The Zorgax were a formidable foe, with technology that far surpassed anything the UNSC had encountered before. If they were planning to invade human space, the consequences would be catastrophic. But Lara was not about to let that happen. She had sworn an oath to protect humanity, and she would do whatever it took to keep that promise, even if it meant sacrificing her own life in the process. She turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "We've bought ourselves some time, but we're not out of the woods yet. We need to make repairs and find a way to get this information back to Earth. The fate of our species depends on it." The crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay in store, for they were human, and they would never surrender. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, they would keep fighting until the very end. Chapter 4. Alliances Forged in Fire. The Galileo drifted through the asteroid field, its hull battered and scarred from the relentless Zorgax assault. Inside the ship, the crew worked feverishly to repair the damage, their faces lined with exhaustion and grim determination. Lara stood before the holographic display in the command center, her eyes fixed on the swirling chaos of the asteroid field. She knew that they couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later, the Zorgax would find them, and they needed to be ready. "Captain, I think I've found something," said Sato, his voice filled with cautious optimism. "I've been analyzing the sensor data from the battle, and I think I've discovered a weakness in the Zorgax's shield technology." Lara turned to face the science officer, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "Go on?" Sato brought up a schematic of a Zorgax ship on the display, highlighting a small, pulsing node on its hull. "This appears to be some kind of shield emitter," he explained. "If we can find a way to target it with a focused burst of energy, we might be able to overload their shields and create an opening for our weapons." Lara studied the schematic, her mind racing with possibilities. It was a long shot, but it was the best chance they had. "Good work, Sato," she said, but we'll need more than just a weakness to take on the Zorgax. We need allies. As if on cue, the sensor console began to beep urgently. Sorkin frowned as he studied the readouts, his eyes widening in surprise. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal from a nearby asteroid," he said. "It's not Zorgax. It looks like it's coming from a Thellaxian ship." Lara felt a surge of hope rise in her chest. The Thellaxians had proven themselves to be brave and resourceful fighters, and their knowledge of the Zorgax could be invaluable. "Set a course for that asteroid," she ordered, "and prepare a boarding party. We're going to help those Thellaxians and maybe make some new friends in the process." As the Galileo approached the asteroid, Lara and her team donned their spacesuits and prepared to disembark. The Thellaxian ship was in bad shape, its hull breached in several places and its engines dark and lifeless. But as they drew closer, Lara could see movement inside the ship. The Thellaxians were still alive, and they were fighting to survive. The boarding party entered the ship through a gaping hole in its hull, their weapons at the ready. Inside, they found a scene of chaos and destruction, with Thellaxian crew members struggling to contain fires and seal breaches in the ship's life support systems. Lara approached a Thellaxian who appeared to be the ship's commander, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're here to help," she said, her voice muffled by her helmet speakers. "My name is Captain Lara Nova, of the United Nations Space Command. We've been fighting the Zorgax, and we could use your help." The Thellaxian commander eyed Lara warily, his hand resting on the hilt of his energy sword. But as he studied her face, he seemed to come to a decision. "I am Commander Zarin of the Thellaxian Defense Force," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "We have been fighting the Zorgax for generations, and we have lost many brave warriors in the process. If you are truly committed to stopping their conquest, then we will stand with you." Lara felt a wave of relief wash over her. With the Thellaxians on their side, they might just have a chance. Over the next few hours, the Galileo's crew worked side by side with the Thellaxians to repair their ship and share information about the Zorgax. Lara learned that the Zorgax had been conquering worlds for centuries, using their advanced technology to subjugate other species and strip their planets of resources. But she also learned that the Thellaxians had been developing new weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter the Zorgax's technology. With their help, the UNSC might be able to turn the tide of the war. As the two ships prepared to depart the asteroid field and rejoin the fight, Lara turned to Commander Zarin and clasped his hand in a gesture of solidarity. "Together, we will stand against the Zorgax," she said, her voice filled with determination, "and we will show them the true strength of the unconquerable spirit." Zarin nodded, his eyes blazing with a fierce pride. "Together," he agreed, "we will fight until the very end." And with that, the two ships blasted off into the void, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they were no longer just humans and Thellaxians, but allies forged in the fire of battle. And together, they would be unstoppable. Chapter 5. The Price of Victory. The combined forces of the Galileo and the Thellaxian fleet hurtled through the void, their weapons primed and their spirits high. They had a plan, a purpose, and a shared enemy. The Zorgax would never know what hit them. Lara stood on the bridge of the Galileo, her eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The Zorgax fleet was massing near a heavily populated Thellaxian colony, their ships bristling with weapons and their intentions clear. They meant to make an example of the colony, to crush the Thellaxians' resistance once and for all. But Lara and her allies had other plans. "All ships prepare to engage," she said, her voice steady and calm. "Remember the plan. Target their shield emitters and hit them with everything you've got. We only have one shot at this." The fleet acknowledged her orders, and Lara felt a surge of pride and determination fill her chest. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Zorgax could never understand: the unbreakable bonds of friendship, and the indomitable human spirit. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace and engaged the Zorgax, the battle quickly became a swirling maelstrom of fire and destruction. The Thellaxian ships darted and weaved through the Zorgax formation, their weapons finding their marks with unerring accuracy. The Galileo held back, its powerful sensors probing the enemy ships for weaknesses and relaying the information to its allies. And then, the moment they had been waiting for, a squadron of Thellaxian bombers broke through the Zorgax defenses and targeted the shield emitters on the enemy flagship. The emitters exploded in a cascade of sparks and debris, and the flagship's shields flickered and died. "Now!" shouted Lara, her voice filled with triumph. "All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship." The fleet unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, their beams and missiles converging on the unprotected Zorgax ship. The flagship shuddered and buckled under the onslaught, its hull rupturing and its engines sputtering. But even as the flagship began to break apart, Lara knew that their victory had come at a terrible cost. The Thellaxian ships had taken heavy casualties, and the Galileo itself was badly damaged. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. As the fleet regrouped and tended to its wounded, Lara made her way to the Galileo's med bay. She had taken a hit during the battle, and her left arm hung uselessly at her side. But she refused to let the pain show on her face. She needed to be strong for her crew. When she arrived at the med bay, she found Commander Zarin waiting for her. The Thellaxian's face was grave, and Lara could see the weight of responsibility and loss etched into his features. "Captain Nova," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I cannot thank you enough for your help today. Without your assistance, my people would surely have been lost." Lara shook her head, wincing as the movement sent a jolt of pain through her injured arm. "We did what we had to do," she said. "We're allies now, and we'll stand together until the end." Zarin nodded, his eyes filled with a fierce determination. "The Zorgax will not take this defeat lightly," he warned. "They will come for us again, and they will not rest until they have crushed all resistance." Lara's jaw tightened, and she met Zarin's gaze with a steely resolve. "Let them come," she said. "We'll be ready for them." As she turned to leave the medbay, Lara's thoughts turned to the battles yet to come. The Zorgax were a formidable enemy, and the road ahead would be long and difficult. But she knew that they would never give up, never surrender. For they were the unconquerable race, the ones who would stand against the darkness no matter the cost, and together they would find a way to victory. No matter what the future held, no matter what sacrifices they would have to make, they would keep fighting until the very end. For the sake of their people, for the sake of the galaxy, they would never back down. And in that moment, Lara knew that they would prevail. Against all odds, against all enemies, the human spirit would endure, forever unconquerable, forever unbroken. Chapter 6. The Dawn of a New Era. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Zorgax had been dealt a crushing blow, but Lara knew that they would not rest until they had exacted their revenge. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but she and her allies were ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. As the Galileo and the Thellaxian fleet limped back to the nearest friendly outpost, Lara called a meeting of the ship's senior staff. They gathered in the briefing room, their faces haggard but determined. "We've won a great victory today," Lara began, her voice filled with pride and resolve. "But we all know that this is just the beginning. The Zorgax will be back, and they'll be stronger than ever. We need to be ready for them." She turned to Sato, the Galileo's science officer. "Sato, I want you to work with the Thellaxians to analyze the data we gathered during the battle. Find out everything you can about the Zorgax's technology and their weaknesses. We need to stay one step ahead of them." Sato nodded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Aye, Captain. I'll get right on it." Lara turned to Sorkin, the ship's tactical officer. Sorkin, I want you to work with Commander Zarin to develop new strategies and tactics for fighting the Zorgax. We need to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable than they are. Sorkin grinned, his face etched with the lines of a seasoned warrior. With pleasure, Captain. The Zorgax won't know what hit them. Finally, Lara turned to Takahashi, the Galileo's helm officer. Takahashi, I want you to plot a course for Earth. We need to report back to UNSC Command and let them know what we've discovered. The fate of our species may depend on it. Takahashi nodded, her face set with determination. Aye, Captain. I'll get us there as fast as I can. As the meeting adjourned and the crew set about their tasks, Lara made her way to the ship's observation deck. She stood before the vast expanse of stars, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that there would be setbacks and sacrifices along the way, but she also knew that they had something the Zorgax could never understand: the power of the human spirit. Humans had always been the underdogs, the ones who had to fight and scrape for every inch of progress. But it was that very struggle that had made them strong, that had forged them into the unconquerable race they were today. And now, as they stood on the brink of a new era, Lara knew that the human spirit would be put to the ultimate test. They would face challenges and dangers beyond anything they had ever known, but they would face them together. For they were not just humans, but something more. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the ones who would stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. As the Galileo set course for Earth, Lara felt a sense of hope and purpose fill her heart. They had a long journey ahead of them, but she knew that they would never give up, never surrender. For they were the unconquerable race, the ones who would fight until the very end, and together they would build a better future for all the peoples of the galaxy. A future where all species could live in peace and harmony, where the strong would protect the weak and the wise would guide the foolish. A future where the human spirit would shine like a beacon of hope and courage, inspiring all who beheld it. And as the stars streaked by outside the observation deck windows, Lara knew that that future was within their grasp. All they had to do was reach out and take it.